In the heart of London, outside the Ministry of Justice, a group of passionate protesters gathered to make their voices heard, expressing strong opposition to the UK government's recent designation of Palestine Action as a terrorist organisation. The air was thick with tension as supporters of Palestine Action made their stance clear, challenging the government's actions, which they viewed as a direct attack on their right to protest and on the cause they believed in. Among those arrested was Elizabeth Augustine, a 4-year-old general practitioner who stood in defiance, knowing full well the consequences of her actions. Augustine, alongside others, held up placards and signs demanding justice for the Palestinian cause. In a scene that captured the essence of the demonstration, Elizabeth, with a determined look on her face, was seen writing on a placard, "So this is the second time I've come here to support Palestine Action," she said, her voice calm but resolute, "and yes, I expect to be arrested. It's not pleasant because I'm a general practitioner and the government should be ashamed of forcing people like me to be arrested." Her words carried weight, not just because of her profession, but because they represented a growing frustration with the political climate surrounding Palestine and its supporters in the UK. Her remarks were not just a plea for justice, they were a reflection of a larger issue at play, one that pits political agendas against individual rights. Elizabeth went on to clarify her stance, highlighting the distinction between the actions of Palestine Action and the terrorist label attached to them. Palestine Action is not a terrorist organisation, she asserted. If you refer to the definition of a terrorist organisation, yes, they are causing damage, but that does not constitute terrorism. One could then claim that all prisoners who have committed damage are terrorists. Is that the case? I don't think so. Palestine Action is therefore being targeted solely for political purposes and to appease Israel. These words were a direct challenge to the government's narrative, and her arrest seemed to only amplify the point she was trying to make, that the political landscape was not just oppressive, it was unjust. As Elizabeth was led away by police officers, her message remained clear: Palestine. Action, she argued, was a group of people fighting for what they believed was right, and they should not be criminalised for doing so. Another figure in the protest, Alice, a 8-year-old seamstress, stood by her girlfriend Rebecca as they too joined the demonstration. Alice spoke about her support for Palestine Action, explaining the importance of standing up for human rights. "My girlfriend says it's important to be here today because the UK government is acting like an authoritarian state by repressing the right to protest," she said, shaking her head in disbelief. Not only is it repressing this right, but it's also labelling a non-violent organisation as a terrorist organisation. The assertion that Palestine Action was a non-violent group stood at the core of the protesters' defence. Alice's girlfriend Rebecca had urged her to come out to the protest, emphasising that this was not just about Palestine, it was about freedom itself. Palestine Action has never contributed to any kind of violence, any kind of killing, unlike the organisations involved in the genocide in Gaza. Alice continued, her voice unwavering. It was a powerful claim that painted the UK government's actions in a controversial light, one that many of the protesters felt was based on geopolitical bias and an unwillingness to challenge Israel's stance in the ongoing conflict. The rallying cries grew louder as more arrests were made. Alice, too, found herself in handcuffs, her commitment to the cause outweighing the consequences she would face. "I think the only way that our democracy can continue is if all the charges are dropped after the judicial review," Alice remarked, her face a mixture of defiance and concern. "So yeah, I hope so. Otherwise, I don't know if I want to live here anymore." It was a sobering reflection on how deeply the political atmosphere had affected the lives of everyday people who simply wanted to stand for something they believed was right. The arrest of protesters was not the only significant moment that day. Marji Mansfield, a spokesperson for the campaign group Defend Our Juries, was also present at the protest. Marji, in her passionate address to the gathered crowd, highlighted the broader implications of the government's crackdown on protesters. This is about making citizens aware of how their democratic rights have been trampled by a government determined to protect arms sales to Israel. She began, her voice echoing through the crowd, to protect the Israeli arms industry, to protect Israel accused of genocide, and to trample on the British public's rights to freedom of protest, freedom of assembly, and freedom of expression. Marji's words painted a grim picture of what she and many others saw as the erosion of civil liberties under the guise of national security. Britain has long boasted of being a bastion of human rights and helped to shape fundamental international humanitarian laws at the end of the Second World War, she continued. However, lately it has not respected these laws. It has even been complicit with countries that have repeatedly violated these essential humanitarian laws. For Marji, this protest was not just about the specific case of Palestine Action. It was about the very foundation of Britain's claim to be a leader in human rights. In her view, the UK was no longer the beacon of justice it once claimed to be. It has, in fact, been complicit with countries that have repeatedly broken these vital humanitarian laws, she said, to protect Israel, accused of genocide, and to trample on the rights of the British public to freedom of protest, freedom of assembly, and freedom of expression. The gathering outside the Ministry of Justice served as a microcosm of a larger global debate. On one side, there were those who believed in the right to protest and speak out against perceived injustice, no matter the cost. On the other side, there were the political forces that saw such demonstrations as a threat to national stability, often labelling groups as extremists to maintain control. For the protesters, the issue was clear. The UK government's stance on Palestine and its treatment of protesters were a reflection of a wider, more troubling trend in global geopolitics, one where the cries for justice were often met with repression. These were not just protests against the government's actions toward Palestine Action. They were protests against a system that, according to many of those arrested, had long abandoned its commitment to human rights. As the protest unfolded, the sound of sirens and the flashing lights of police cars became a stark reminder of the divide between the political establishment and those who sought to challenge it. The arrests, the chants, and the placards were all part of a larger story, one that transcended the specific cause of Palestine Action and spoke to the growing frustration many felt with the political climate in the UK and beyond. In the aftermath, the protesters, like Elizabeth, Alice and Marji, would undoubtedly face the consequences of their actions. But for them, the personal cost seemed insignificant in the face of what they saw as a much larger moral imperative, a call for justice, for freedom, and for a government to respect the fundamental rights of its citizens, no matter their cause. The legacy of these protests, whether through the voices of those arrested or through the broader movement they represented, will undoubtedly be felt for years to come. In a world increasingly divided by political agendas, the protests outside the British Ministry of Justice serve as a stark reminder of the importance of standing up for what one believes in, even in the face of overwhelming opposition. For now, the protesters may have been silenced by the authorities, but their message is far from over. It lives on in the actions of every individual who chooses to stand for what they believe is right, no matter the consequences. And as long as voices like theirs continue to be heard, the fight for justice will never truly be over.
Behind you.
No worries. Can we intervene or not?
No, they're already done it. They're handcuffed together.
Okay, no worries.
Why don't you just take me that way?
Can do, yeah, we can try that.
Yeah, we're going to be going this way. Just don't want to knock your side.
We're just going to be
Fine.
as careful as
It'll
we
be
can.
fine.
Okay.
Just one. Can I move your hand?
Go for it.
Thank you. So we only just stop. Right, 3, 2, 1, lift. 3, 2, 1.
I'm here with my girlfriend, and she says, I oppose genocide, I support Palestine Action. I'm innocent! This is my girlfriend! This is my girlfriend! She's the terrorist! I'm innocent! She has a mind of her own! Thank you!
I've got left leg. Stop. Move out, get in there, What's going on? You've got him?
Right, so I'm just going to give you a quick search.
Oh, over Z, thank you.
So this is the second time that I will be coming. I'm coming to support Palestine Action, and yes, I expect to be arrested. It's not a very nice thing because I am a GP, and it's the government should be ashamed if it's forcing people like me to come out and get arrested. So Palestine Action is not a terrorist organization if you look at the definition of what constitutes a terrorist organization. Yes, they are causing criminal damage, but that does not constitute terrorism. Then we could be saying that all the prisoners in prison having committed criminal damage are terrorists. Is that the case? I don't think so. So Palestine Action is being singled out purely to serve political purposes and to pacify Israel.
Sure. Yes. Hello, my name's Alice. This is my lover, Rebecca. She's my girlfriend. We've been together for a long time. Unfortunately, she decided to come here today to the Ministry of Justice to do this, embarrassing thing, which I have, nothing to do with. But, sure. One sec, let me just check. Okay, so Rebecca says that it's important to be here today because the UK government is acting like an authoritarian state by repressing people's right to protest. Not only repressing people's right to protest, but designating a non-violent organisation as a terrorist organisation. Palestine Action have never contributed to any kind of violence, any kind of killing against any of the companies involved in the genocide in Gaza. All they've done is I think the only way that our democracy can continue is if all the charges are dropped after the judicial review. So, yeah, I hope so. Otherwise, I don't know if I want to live here anymore.
Campaign, and it's for people to realise how their democratic rights have been trashed by a government intent on protecting weapons sales to Israel, protecting the Israeli weapons company, protecting Israel, who's charged with plausibly committing genocide, and trashing the rights of the British public to freedom to protest, freedom of assembly, freedom of expression. Centuries, Britain prided itself on being a bastion of human rights. It helped draft the important laws at the end of the Second World War, international humanitarian laws. But in recent times, it has not upheld those laws. It has, in fact, been complicit with countries that have repeatedly broken these vital humanitarian laws.